All right, I have returned. And what I was trying to think of was like property getters and setters, not accessors, um, which is the thing you can do in JavaScript these days. When did that happen? Defining getters and setters. Yeah, so you can define a method on an object, and when you access B, it calls this function, this method. So that's interesting, right? Essentially, what I'm thinking of here is like, how do we defer actually validating the environment until it's needed? So let's figure out what's going on here. So is there? Do we have a? We probably don't even have like a stack trace of this issue because we literally exit the process when this happens, which is not great. But it seemed like a good idea at the time because that meant our server, if it was loaded up and the environment wasn't correct, it would bail out as fast as possible, which seemed like a good idea. It still does, except for the fact that I think multiple things import this env dot, well, JS is probably how it's imported, yeah. So there's at least 3 places, right? So here, we import this to get env to get the database URL. And here, we get the environment and we pass it to various things. This is the main function of our server, so that's not going to come into play for those tests. And in authentication.ts, we import the environment to use to read for like the Discord client ID and client secret and base URL. So we're not like importing it everywhere, but what do we think? How is this causing that env file to be imported? So let's hide this sidebar. All right. So we are importing routers app.js, which imports router from trpc.js. Which imports context, which imports Prisma, which imports the environment. Yeah. But the issue, of course, is that yeah. Well, think about this. Even if we were to make it so that the env object that was importable from env.ts was using an accessor, we would still evaluate env.database URL here, and presumably it would fail validation. Can we just test this one file? H. Filter by file name is P. Yeah, that one. Great. And we do get errors outputted, right? So it's complaining because these environment variables aren't provided, which makes sense. Interesting. Postgres. Yeah. So Postgres DB, Postgres host, Postgres user should. Okay. Let's go back a few steps. So what are we doing? We are. Okay, so I mean, fundamentally, this test is trying to avoid touching the Prisma, like it's creating its own Prisma client, right? To pass into things. So we should see if we can avoid importing Prisma elsewhere. Like, why are we importing? Okay, this function, create inner TRPC context. We import Prisma. Alternatively, oh, I could, Okay, this function is called here. And there's, okay, I'm just trying to figure out, like, yeah, I know it's deprecated. User weighted return type of function. Interesting. Shall we try doing that? Okay. Hey, Abix. How's it going? All right, let's get another terminal. Do I have a script to do just like type check everything? I have lint. I have TSC, but is TypeScript configured to not emit? Hopefully. No emit true. Great. Okay, so npm run TSC. Make sure I'm not breaking anything. Great. Okay. So thanks, documentation. And I guess that means we don't need to import this anymore. All right, great. How has your Sunday been going, Abix? Worth noting that usually on Sundays, for the past couple of months, I've been doing game dev stuff with Godot, learning about that. But I need to get back onto the like calorie counting bandwagon. No, habit. Yeah, there we go. And this app was my way of doing that, which I can't really show you because it's broken right now. But I need to fix it so that I can be using it daily to track my joules. Joules in anyway. I think at some point I was imagining that I would probably go like either track directly or have integrations to track like exercise and like have both calories in and calories out. But I had not gotten that far, and it was good enough, and then I just kind of stopped using it, and then it broke, and then yeah. But I need to attend to that, and so today we're working on a web app instead of learning more Godot game dev 2D and 3D stuff. But I will be going back to doing that probably next Sunday. And we'll see. Okay, so I was hoping that we can figure out a way. So the thing is in TRPC API integration test.tx, we're after this type. What are we doing with app router? We do actually want to call things an app router, so it's not just the type that we're after. And routers underscore app.js, which is TS, does import from this file. What I'm hoping I can figure out a way to do is to sever the connection between this test file and this an env.ts file that will fail if the environment is not specifically set up a certain way. But there's a chain of imports here that I need to see if I can figure out a way to sever so that we can run the unit tests without having to satisfy all the environment conditions. So in the case of context.js, we do want to access Prisma. Abic says, I have a question. Do you have like a dev or IT tip to start dev? I think that there are a lot of good resources out there. There was some stuff, I don't have the links handy anymore, but between just like Google and like the AI stuff that's available now, there's a lot of resources to like how to get started. I guess the other thing is that there's so many different like ecosystems and languages and things. It's hard to know which thing to start with. I think something like Python can be really good because it provides a really simple way to get started, where you can just like you can do some little programs in a terminal, or you can make a file and or in Python, and that sort of level of thing. If is the question more of like how to learn how to code, or is it how to code but how do you turn that into a career, or is it start can mean different things, I guess. For me, I started learning how to code before I even had a PC on like a programmable calculator. This is in the 90s. Doing stuff there, and then my first computer came with Windows 95 to give you a sense of like when this was. Yeah, it felt very hard to start. Like there were resources even then, but it seems much easier just to find resources, but I think maybe harder to know where to start. I want to learn to code to start my cybersecurity later on. I see. Anything, right? Find something, find material, regardless of like what language it's for, as long as it's something that works on your computer. Something that is not going to give you, that doesn't have a cost or a barrier of entry, that has material that appeals to you, right? So if you find, I just don't think there's going to be a one size fits all solution, but there are so many resources, right? So just like I would start with, how do I start learning to code, right? And you're gonna get Codecademy and things like that. But the stuff on Reddit, AI overview, but there's a ton of free resources. If you find something that's like a paid course that is like whatever, if it seems like it's going to work for you, but there's so many free things, so many ways of going about doing it, and I don't think any of them are going to be wrong. Just you got to find the thing that like works for you, especially with so many offerings. I think the way I went about learning coding long ago was in fits and starts. Yeah. Unless you have someone that recently learned coding, is like, I did this course and this worked for me, someone I don't know that I would pursue. Like, me personally, I'm not a course person, but I know some people are, so I want to put that out there. But YouTube videos, blog posts, there's just so much out there for like getting started. But I will say, I feel like for me, watching some like tutorials, watching people, like seeing some stuff happen, like actually someone writing code and running it and seeing it happen, very basic things, which none of what I'm doing right now on stream, none of this code is like, this is not where you start. For good or ill, it's kind of complex, but serves some purposes that I had for making this application, right? So this is not something that would be a good place to be like, oh well, okay, I need to make a program, so I need to do all these things. No. A Python program can just be print hello world, right? Now the question is, when you want to do more with it, if I was in your place, 0% coding info in 2025, how would I start? Find a free Python tutorial, and start from there. The thing is like the language and those details will become relevant later down the road. But in terms of learning the basics are, a program is a sequence of instructions, right? So A equals 1, B equals 2, C equals A plus B, right? A sequence of instructions that happen in order. And then you can choose to do different things, right? So if I say D equals input, right? And I ask the user for a number, I can say if D is 3, I can do different things, right? So I can select between different choices. Now, how do you know like what equality is versus assignment? How do you know that this needs to be in quotes or not? Those are the fundamentals that the questions of how you know are things you'll learn regardless of language. And then the details of what makes sense in the language will be something as you pick up languages. I think the best thing you can do is start somewhere. Just start. What's the expression? The best time to plant a tree is yesterday. The next best time is today, right? So start, and then you can build upon that, right? And then the other fundamental thing for programming, right? The 3 fundamental things to learn about programming: sequence, selection, and iteration, right? So sequence is one thing after another, like a set of instructions. Selection is you can make the program do one thing or a different thing. And then you can loop. Iteration, you can repeat over things. I mean, I'm pretty good at although I don't know how to code. I know kind of basic stuff like input, print, if, how to loop variables, etc., but I don't know when to use it. Well, that comes from practice and solving problems, right? So I think one of the things looking at introductory stuff online, it will give you the building blocks, the things you're talking about and the things I'm talking about here, but find things that will give you practice projects, the simplest things. Find a simple problem to solve, something that's like so a thing that's used sometimes in interviews, especially for more junior, well, I think in roles where people just want to know, okay, that looks all good on paper, like that resume looks good, but can this person actually code? Or are they, they slipping through the cracks, getting by without actually knowing how to code somehow? I don't know. It's FizzBuzz. FizzBuzz is a problem that you can look up online. It's very simple to solve. It's very simple to like explain how to solve it. And those building blocks of like loops and variables and printing and input are things that you can pretty easily use without a lot of extra stuff to solve that kind of problem. So look for things like that to practice with. There's also things like Project Euler, coding beginner, coding practice problems, right? So here's someone posting something on their GitHub, daily dev, do things like this. Code Wars. Oh yeah. Code Wars is something someone who is often here chatting with me, told me about a while ago. And there's some more advanced problems. I wonder if they have, oh, let's see, difficulty, easiest, right? Calculate an average. Write a function which calculates the average of the numbers in a given array. So if you have an array of numbers, how do you calculate the average? Well, how do you calculate the average, as a human? You add all the things together and you divide by how many numbers there are. So how do you do that in Python or JavaScript or C# or whatever, right? So things like that are how you get better at solving problems, because fundamentally, like, coding is having the knowledge of the building blocks of the language that you're using and understanding a problem and solving it. You put those things together, you write code. All right, speaking of solving problems, I don't know if that was helpful or not, but I hope so. Speaking of solving problems, what I want to do is I want to figure out, so we're importing this type, this context type here, which depends on this function. And something I don't know is when we import type context from context.js, is that going to evaluate Prisma here? Ooh. Excuse me. I have a thought. So we have a function, or rather, we have a bit of code in here that instantiates this Prisma client class. Why? And it does have a dependency on this env, right? But and then we're using env.node.env. If it's not production, we set Prisma global.prisma equals to Prisma. Why do we do that? Why do we do that when it's not production? Why did me 3 years ago do this? I was hoping, okay, there we go. Yeah, that all happened at the same time. Why are we doing this when it's not production? I don't know. So I'm going to remove this. Okay. So what I was thinking about, though, before I got sidetracked with that last thought, is that if I had a function that was responsible for doing this bit here, and then had that in a separate file, would that be of any help? So this imports context. Context imports this to get at Prisma. Which reads global Prisma or instantiates it. It's kind of a chicken and the egg thing here, right? Where, okay, router's app, we want app router. And app router depends on grpc.js. And that depends on context. But it doesn't depend on Okay, why does it depend on context? Just for the type? Huh. Does it all just come down to context? Is that the two paths? One direct one and then one through router's app? I mean, we also pull in procedures, and those procedures then don't have a direct dependence on the prisma.ts file. Maybe it is. Interesting. And yeah, so this also depends on context, but just again for the type. So does it all just come down to dependence on the context type? And can we divorce the context type from instantiate? I'm going to read your message as well, Abix, in just a moment. I want to finish this thought. Maybe so. Right, this context type, which depends on understanding this create context function. Which calls inner TRPC context. Is that the only place where we use Prisma? Thinking. The issue is we actually need to hold the Prisma client here. So we have this dependency on instantiating it, which means we have a dependency on the environment. Which means, yeah. Okay, what did you say? I use Linux, and I feel I need to learn how to code to even use Linux more efficiently than me using it right now. I tried downloading Python and VS Code. I couldn't find anything on YouTube, neither Google. I think Reddit is good backup, or AI could you confirm? Yeah, I think I'm not really, well, I will say I have been in a situation of needing to solve problems where I was not really familiar with what options there were. So kind of like as a research aid, using AI to be like, to get me started and give me context. I mean, I'm not using a lot of AI stuff right now because I haven't even really started coding yet. I've mostly coding yet, right? I have been, trying to figure out what I'm going to do here. And I could probably, I could go over to Copilot and be like, hey, what do you think? But I kind of want to just figure things out for myself at the moment. And that's probably something that's going to be valuable is taking advantage of AI. I've heard good things from people who are newer to coding, of using it like a coach, right? Of like, hey, I'm learning this thing. What are some good things to look at or practice or do, right? So that's also, I think, an option. Just as long as you're not going to learn stuff if you have something else do the thing for you instead of practicing yourself. Although I think there is value in understanding how you can take advantage of AI, especially once you're working on projects and you're trying to do stuff that you can take advantage of AI to churn things out. But the thing is if you don't know what it's supposed to at least roughly look like, how are you going to know what it's making for you is right? Because they're not perfect. I've seen some really good and some really bad code from LLMs. So, but yes, and I'm sure there are things on YouTube, whatever language, there'll be something somewhere where someone is doing things. I don't know. It's sometimes hard to know what you're going to be able to find until you find it.
The pants we're going to wear tomorrow and the next day.
That is my attempt to convey a shrug on the keyboard key. So my thoughts here with this file are, can we somehow, oh, I could, you know what I could do? I could probably, instead of trying to do this, I could put the type, I could be more explicit about the type. I mean, this is the type, right? Of can I hover over context? There we go. So here's the context. It's Prisma session request. It's a pretty complicated type. I don't know that I necessarily want to just like, I could just copy this type and put this here. But that means that if any of this other stuff changes, the type no longer matches. On software, do I think VS Code is beginner friendly for a starter? I think that it can be, like VS Code, like out of the box without any extensions, has a lot, even then still has a lot of features nowadays. It is something that you're still gonna have to like learn how to use it, right? If you want something that's really beginner friendly, you could always use like Notepad or something of that vein. I guess on Linux, I mean, depending on your, if you're on GNOME, like gedit is still a thing, right? Or Kate on KDE. Just like a text editor is fine, but Mint, yeah, I have not touched. I think I actually had Mint distro install at one point many years ago. But yeah, I think VS Code is probably a good place to start. You could go with Vim or Emacs. I don't think those are necessarily beginner friendly. In fact, quite the opposite, most people would say. Although I used Vim for a long time ago. Switch back to Windows. I couldn't advocate for that or dual boot. Technically, I'm dual booting right now, although I have no intention of going back to Windows. At some point, I'm gonna finish moving all my files. So this is NixOS. I switched. I got this installed. It's been like a month or something now. I had to boot over to Windows once to try to track down some files, but since then I've only been on this. This was the distro I was using before I switched to Windows 10 a few years ago, and I have no intention of switching to a Windows 11. So it was Linux for me, back again. But you know, I hesitate to say, oh, you should do this or you should do that, because I don't know your circumstance. And like, I wouldn't say, oh, you should use NixOS, because it's not something that is easy to figure out or how to Google about figuring out. I think it's kind of misleading, right? I think it's less about, oh, this is easy and this is hard intrinsically. I think what it is that if there is kind of widely known things, or there is a lot of resources for a thing, framed a lot of different ways, right? So more popular operating systems are going to have more resources, more people talking about it, more people doing things in it. It's going to be easier to find answers for how to do things, right? And as a beginner, that is something that's valuable, right? So, you know, Ubuntu or a Mac or Windows, some of those are more popular than others. But I have no intention of ever using an Apple product, and I've given up on Windows, so here I am. And I'm vaguely familiar with NixOS because I had used it before Windows, and it has some things going for it. More challenging to set up maybe than other distros. My first, well, like I said, my first PC had Windows 95 on it. I think within like 6 months I had installed FreeBSD back then. FreeBSD 2.2.2. I ordered a CD-ROM from Walnut Creek CD-ROM. This is like a mid 90s thing one would do. Order a CD and have it mailed to you. All right. Anyway, can we figure out what we're doing here? Feels very stuck. So what is importing context? JS. Okay, so server imports the context. The import create context. And then our test imports it. This file imports context for some reason. Oh, right, because we get user ID from slug and we import context. Why wouldn't we just import Prisma? Yeah, and then you need to import and get rid of that import. Okay. And then we can just pass context.prisma. Yeah. So that's one less place that's directly importing from context. And then hey, this looks familiar. Didn't I just get user ID from slug? Get user ID from slug. It feels like maybe these should be in a file. Let's see, where do I have? Interesting. I will take this version because it has some comments in it. And we're going to make a file called get user ID from slug.ts. And then we're going to change this to actually take Prisma. And then okay. And then we should what do I want to do? I want to export default. Export default async function. There we go. And then we import that, and we pass Prisma. And then the other file that was changed, we get rid of this because I'm pretty sure this is the same implementation, right? It checks to see if user slug is undefined. It gets the user based on the slug being the user slug. And if it's null, it returns null. Otherwise, it returns user.id. Yep. Same thing. There we go. And then we don't need that import anymore. Let's check that we have not broken types anywhere. We did. Yeah, I suspected. that would be wrong. Music is so quiet. Oh, we're on a new track. Okay. Okay, no more type errors. Good. So back to our search of things that are using context. We're down to 2. It's just this file we import to create context, and here we TRPC doesn't. Oh, right. Oh, so great. I have a mixture. Some places I'm importing something.js, and other places I don't have the extension. Why is there variation? Not sure. It's not great. Okay, so then during those things, we have this test. We have rate-limit.ts that's importing context. And we have trpc.ts that's importing context type. Can we... So basically, we're taking advantage here. We're taking advantage of the fact that this function, TypeScript can infer the return type, right? We're returning these things. And so it can see, oh, well, Prisma is a Prisma client. Session is this. Request is this. Do we use context in this file? So a thing I said I didn't really want to do, but we could try to do, is just take this and statically define the type, the type of context. So this is probably good enough to be like this, and then maybe like that. Now, if we define context this way, does that type check? Yes. Okay. I don't hate it. Do we have just like a dedicated types file? So what I could do is here we can create context.ts. We move this type out of here into here. Yeah, import that, and then import that, and you can't really export a default type, so we're just going to export context from context, and then this becomes types context, right? So all of those imports will change, and essentially what this will allow us to do is all the places where we want to know the type of context, or when you want to use the type of context to tell TypeScript, like what is the relationship between these things, we don't have to import from a file that is going to, when imported, look at the environment variables of the running process, which also is kind of a code smell. You know, it's weird to do, but because of the way we could probably change things in a different way at some point, but this is what I'm doing. What is this complaining about? Type request params dictionary any parts QoS record is missing the following properties from type request. So this request is coming from Types Express, and I think maybe something's wrong about this. Yes, this is the wrong type. Yeah. Okay, cool. So then that is happy. Then we're gonna change that. What I'm gonna do is I'm just gonna rerun TSC, and we'll see what other errors we have, and I'll tell us other places I might need to change. There we go. Server types context.ts. Cannot find module authentication. So this is supposed to be that. Let's see if that works. Yep. Okay. So, the problem that we had before was that when we tried to, this is the wrong terminal. When we tried to run our tests, it failed. Still failing. Okay. So, why? Clearly, this file is still importing something that's importing server env.ts. What is it? So types context, routers app, trpc.js. Was there something else in here that was touching rate limit? No. No. App router of routes. Is this file importing things? Are these files? They shouldn't be. Let's just exit out of that and rerun it. Seems like some of our tests are not up to date as well, but std error server integration test trpc API to integration test that integration.test.ts. No. What am I missing? It'd be really great. Let's do this. So let's temporarily in env.ts, let's throw an error instead of process.exit so that we can maybe hopefully see where things are going wrong. Okay. Less than helpful. Do we have a larger stack trace somewhere? So we just see server env.ts, server prisma.ts, but how is prisma.ts getting imported? Are we importing it from somewhere? We're importing Prisma client. Yeah, well, like we're manually constructing the Prisma client to avoid importing our local Prisma file. So what's up with that? All right. Yeah, Prisma line 7 imports env.js or ts. But what imports this file. Let us try doing this. Okay, that's fun. We found a reference to public code. Sure. All right. What I'm hoping I would see was like this getting triggered, and it would tell me what is calling it, but it doesn't. Oh, right. Because here's a question for you. If I do this, oh yeah, that doesn't work. I would have to do something like that. Okay, there we go. So, this is going to be annoying. Okay, so Prisma.ts is imported from server authorization.ts. Oh, right, because we import this in, yes, okay. I understand. Let's back that change out. So in our types context.ts, we import user session. Can we? I mean, we're just using the types, right? So can we do this? And will that have a positive? Like, does that change the behavior of the import that we're importing the type? Maybe I will learn something here. Did the error go away? No. Okay. Still, this is correct that we should say import type because we're just after the types of these things. But the thing is, we're importing this file, and this file then imports these things for some reason. Oh, so we're just gonna want to run ads soon. Yeah, we provide functions in here to like talk to Discord and map users and stuff like that. But this type, this user session type, wraps user session user. What we should do is we should just take these and move them into authentication.ts, or just put it in context. That would seem kind of weird, right? Maybe session.ts. There we go. And then we import from session. Yep. And then we break everything. Types session. Sure. Cool. So let's quit this and we'll run our type check. Run tsc. Right, because I was doing that in the other terminal, so it wasn't in the history of this one. What else is broken? Okay. Server context. Yeah. Okay, so we need type session. Oh, we don't need Prisma client here anymore. All right. Okay. So now, if we run the tests, I mean, we're still going to get failures. But the question is, will our integration test fail because of the environment? Seems like no. Right, so yes, seems like yes, actually. That's unfortunate. Okay, so oops. Did I did not save that. Still getting here. which means Prisma is still being imported. What I'm trying to avoid. Session has no dependencies. This file has no dependencies. Okay, well, I am going to pause here for a couple of minutes. We can take a break. Twitch is gonna do its ads thing, and I'll come back and keep banging my head on this wall. All right, be right back.